live audience.
I think we're live now. We're live. Hi guys, thanks for joining us for our next live YouTube tasting event. I'm Wayne Smith, the Managing Director of Brew York, and to my right
is Lee Graham, head brewer, co-founder.
So we're going to go through, hopefully you've all bought the tasting pack and you've got the 4 beers in front of you. We're going to go through the running order and a few other parts and the agenda of the day. But one of the things I want to say first is make sure you take the Espresso Patronum out of the fridge and put it to the side now, because it's going to be much, much better when it's warmer later on. So
over to me. So we're going to be doing things a little bit differently this time. You'll probably see we're sat in a slightly different location. That's because we're not going to be moving around with each beer this time, because for the first time ever, we have a live audience. Hey. A live audience who's probably going to be a little bit quiet for a while because we've just served them some lovely barbecue food.
Yeah, the guys at Blue Smoked Meats have just brought them down a tasting platter each, which, super generous of Morgan to sample, give the guys some samples. We thought it was going to be a small little picking food, but you've got a fair bit to eat there, which was great. It makes us super jealous, so we're just going to sit and watch you eat and then grab ours at the end of it.
Well, to be honest, I'm on a keto diet at the minute, and all I do is eat meat, so I'm getting a little bit bored of it. I never ever thought those words would come out of my mouth, but yeah, I am bored of meat right now.
Block of cheese.
So the reason these guys are here is because they entered our social media competition. They had to submit either a photo or a video of them doing something interesting with one of our cans, so these are our lucky winners. If you want to be here next time, look out for our next competition where we will ask you to do something similar. I have to point out these guys here who absolute stars in the show, did the Juice Foresight there. Is it Price is Right? Was it that one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait till I've got my mouthful, then ask me a question.
Mouthful of it, yeah. So we have Bruce in the house with us right now.
Yeah. Was it Price? No, was it? I can't remember the name of it.
It's the one where they go higher, lower, and you did the LED thing. Right. Okay. So yeah, we're staying in the same place this time. We don't want you to be held up, so should we crack open the first beer while I start chatting about the sequence? So the first beer we're going to be having is this one here, which is Dame Judi Quench, 5.7% DDH Pale Ale. If at any point, I think my cheat sheet. Not yet. I'm going to have to explain that now. So we have a cheat sheet that kind of has a script that's usually held off camera, which just got moved so I couldn't read it. But anyway, so we are going to be doing the beers in a particular sequence. If at any point you're not sure where we are, you will see there is a can here, a big blow up of the beer, and I'll keep swapping this out. So here we've got the artwork of Dame Judi Quench. So as we taste each beer, we'll be telling you about the concept behind the beer, how we came up with the artwork, if we brewed it with someone else, who that was, the idea behind the recipe, all of that kind of good stuff. And as we go along, and this is a big request, guys, what we need is your questions. As we say every time, the more questions you throw at us, the more interactive we can make this, and the more interesting it's going to be. So to get your questions in, what you need to do is post directly below the video on YouTube. Make a comment. We've got Alison behind the camera over there who's recording your comments, and we'll pass them in with a little hand on a stick, which you've hopefully seen before. The audience here will also be asking questions as we go through the evening, and I'm glad to see at least one of them has arrived with a list.
So the beers we're going to be tasting tonight were voted on by you guys. So we did a social media competition, well, not really competition, a social media vote, and we brought back fan favourites. So the first one was Dame Judi. Second beer we're going to be tasting is Ripple Twister. And then we're going to move on to Katy Berry, and then we're going to finish, probably will finish us off on Espresso Patronum. So those 4 beers in that order, and we'll tell you a little bit more about each beer when we get to it.
And like Wayne said there, it probably will finish us off. To let you in on the not so little secret, Wayne was at a bar opening till 2 a.m. this morning, and I've just found out being on this keto diet halves my alcohol tolerance. So this should be an interesting live social experiment. So as we discuss each beer, we'll also be coming up with a specialist subject. We're going to be talking about, for example, how do collabs rather come about, how do you decide what to brew, etc. So we'll be discussing that. Wayne's going to give you some insight into our new subscription, which is coming soon. And right at the end, we have some very, very big news to announce, which I can't say any more about. You're going to have to wait with us until the end. So that'll be announced when we do the final beer, Espresso Patronum, at the end. So, as for this first beer.
So hopefully you've all got Dame Judi open now. You can taste the beer. Like as Lee mentioned, it's a double dry hopped pale ale. It's a DDH Pale Ale, 5.7%. It's a beer that we first brewed 18 months ago now.
Sounds about right.
18 months ago with one of our favourite bars in York, House of Trembling Madness. So we've been wanting to do a collab with them for a while, which means basically you work together with another brewery or bar or relevant party. You come up with ideas, you exchange ideas on the recipes, what type of style you want to brew, and then they come down here and we brew the beer. Being York based, Trembling Madness ourselves, we wanted to make it a York themed beer, and then we were trying to, hopefully you all know us now for our pun names and our celebrity inspired beers. So we wanted a York based celebrity, so we thought, well, I had a look through the list, it wasn't huge, and Dame Judi Dench was high on the list.
Actually, who would it have been if not Dame Judi?
Who else is from York? Any famous people from York?
I know the guy that did the James Bond things from York.
What did someone say?
Guy Fawkes.
Yeah. Dick Turpin, yeah, his grave's up the road, isn't it?
Yeah.
An interesting name.
Yeah, I'm sure the puns could come out on that one. But yeah, the guys at Trembling Madness also came up with a name for this. They put the idea forward and it was really cool. And if any of you, well, I'm guessing you all follow us in some form on social media because you're here, and that was how you won the competition. But yeah, Lee's got a link to Dame Judi. And,
Well, a tenuous one.
Yeah.
My sister works with her nephew. So that's about as tenuous as it gets.
But it worked because he went to a family party and took a case of Dame Judi Quench with him, and we got a nice signed photo back of Dame Judi Dench drinking our beer, which was really cool. And then when the film Cats launched, a researcher from the Graham Norton show rang us up and said, "Oh, we'd like to put your beer on the show." We're like, "That's good, but it was a one-off batch of beer, we don't have any." So we had to ring around our customers, our off-licensed customers who then sell the beer on to direct to.
Yeah, we had to buy some of our beer back to send it to the BBC.
Yeah, and it was pretty cool. We got it was Hugh Grant and
There was Matthew McConaughey, Hugh Grant,
Jennifer Hudson,
and Chris, whatever he's called from Coldplay.
Oh, Chris Martin, yeah.
Chris Martin, yeah.
Yeah, and so afterwards we decided that we'd go away and brew Matthew McConaughey's. We thought if he goes back on the show, we'll have to get that beer down to him then. But yeah, it got us quite a lot of social media attention at that point in time. So every time we brew it, it does get sells out really quickly. So
in fact, it's still to this day must be the highest amount of social engagement we've had on any post we've ever done.
Yeah, we do get quite a lot actually from one which was great but didn't work out great for us, which is the beer that we had to rename. We abbreviate it now, we call it HYG. But if anyone knows what that beer is, we got the guy who played Chunk from the Goonies, who does the Truffle Shuffle.
Well, now they know which beer it was.
He basically retweeted and mentioned our beer on it, which was great. But it also came to the attention of Warner Brothers in him doing so, and they issued us a. I can't really say much more than that anyway. But needless to say, that beer doesn't exist in that form.
I almost put on a Superman t-shirt tonight for celebrity. So in terms of the actual style, we've said it's a double dry hopped pale. So that means during the dry hopping directly in the fermenter, there's 2 points at which you introduce the hops. That's super inefficient. You don't yield a lot of beer doing it that way, but it does make for a much intenser, hoppier character. And the hops that we've used in this one are Columbus Citra Mosaic. Is that right? Is that what it says
I was
over
going to say,
there?
look at the cheat sheet. Yeah, Columbus Citra Mosaic. You'll notice that it's quite a pale coloured beer. So the malt we use is extra pale malt, and then there's a little bit of speciality in there. We use lots of oats because we want the hazy, hoppy, haziness from the beer, and then the hops. Get my words out. It's what happens when you drink till 2 in the morning. Yeah, so lots of oats in there to increase the haze and also to help suspend the hops in the beer to get the nice hoppy flavour.
Not quite got the haze we're used to this one. But the flavour's there. The flavour's absolutely banging. I think we brewed this 3 times.
Yeah,
I think flavour-wise, I think this is the best iteration. Appearance-wise, it's not got that haze we've seen in the previous versions.
No, it's one of, we don't always like to keep rebrewing beers. Obviously, we have a core range which we rebrew, and those beers should always be available. Then we do our speciality beers and one-offs, which we might brew once or twice a year. Don't like to brew them too often because otherwise they effectively then become a core beer, and we already have a core range which we think is the best of those styles that we brew. So the equivalent core beer that we have is Time Travelling Taxi. So that's a double dry hopped pale ale. It's one of my favourites, but even though it's core, we haven't had it available for a while, have we?
It's packaged next week.
So it's been one of the challenges of coronavirus, and the way we had to change our business model means that because pubs weren't open, there wasn't much point brewing lots of core beer because the pubs wouldn't have been able to buy it off us. And although you guys like to buy direct from our website, there's not a huge volume all the time for core beer. Whereas when we bring a specialty beer out, it seems to sell out straight away. So we switched up our model quite a bit during coronavirus and brought lots and lots of new beers out. We will be getting back to some sort of normality now and making sure we have all our core beers always available, still doing specials but less frequent.
Yeah, one thing we noticed through the lockdown was that you all turned into housebound alcoholics. We ordinarily brew 1 double IPA or triple IPA a year. We did 3 just in the lockdown period because they were absolutely flying out the door.
Yeah, super strong beers sold really well because I guess if you're at home, you don't have to get a taxi back or anything, so you can just enjoy it and roll into bed.
As someone more knowledgeable than me said, there was less reasons to not drink, which I quite liked. So that covers the beer. So the specialist subject we wanted to cover at this point is to talk about collabs, given that this was a collab with a local bar. It's a very big part of our industry. You can collab with, say, a local roastery if you're doing a coffee beer. You might collab with a local bar if you're going to have a dedicated beer for their bar. We've collabed with wholesalers, distributors, but the most common one, of course, is to collaborate with a different brewery, or on some occasions, multiple breweries. Although it will be no surprise that the more kind of cooks you have, the more difficult something becomes. So most typically it's going to be a collab with another brewery. The way in which these generally come about is you pick up the phone or you ping someone an email and say, I really like your beers, I really love what you're doing, I think we should work together. And then you go there or they come here, or what quite often happens is the home and away. So you'll do a beer there at one point, and then maybe a month or 2 down the line, you'll come and do a beer in your place. The best ones are where you're going to learn something from it. So you visit the other person's brewery, 9 times out of 10, they're going to do something in a different way to you. There's always something there to be learned. They might have a piece of equipment, you're like, wow, why don't we have one of those? That would make our life so much easier. Or they do something in a different way where you're like, oh my God, why have we done it that way for so long? So we really learn as an industry by visiting each other through these kind of collabs. And sometimes it's about a particular ingredient. So we do a lot with coconut. You'll hopefully be familiar with our Tom Coco beer. So an example is we've just worked with a brewery down in Cambridge who up until this point have not worked with coconut. So they wanted to do an IPA and introduce coconut into that. So then we were giving them the benefit of our experience when it comes to, well, how do you prepare the coconut to go in the beer? How do you then infuse the coconut into the beer? So there's a lot to be gained from these collabs. I really, really enjoy doing them. But there is a huge spectrum to it. Sometimes it's a bit of an email exercise, and sometimes one party may dominate too much. I'm being completely clear about this. Sometimes the exercise might be nothing more than a marketing exercise. They have a beer that they want to brew, it's already defined, they just want to have your brand on it. They, and I will be blunt here, are shit collabs. We give them a very, very wide step now. We don't go near those type of things anymore. For us, a collab absolutely has to be something that they're going to get something out of it, we're going to get something out of it, and most importantly, they're to make a good beer. So
Yeah.
1 week, sorry, just to finish, one we have coming up, which I don't think I've even told you about this one yet, is, well, I have told you we're working with S43,
Yeah.
but what they want to do is a pumpkin beer. Up until a couple of years ago, I'd have been, what, pumpkin in a beer? That's weird. But we have a Texan friend, Travis, who has a bit of an obsession with pumpkin beers, and he comes and sees us once a year, and he brings over all these rare beers that we would never get in this country, and he always brings pumpkin beers. And he's really opened my eyes to what pumpkin can be in a beer, and apparently it can be quite good. So we're going to, for the first time, be working with pumpkin because of our alliance with another brewery to do that particular project.
And Lee hasn't mentioned one of the best things about Colab is you get to go to visit the other brewery and have a few beers with them and just hang out and go, enjoy the scene in a different city, which is always pretty cool. Sometimes there's not much work goes into a collab. There is behind the scenes. You'll do a lot of emailing back and forward and recipe ideas. But on the actual day, you literally turn up, get a photo holding a spade, pretending that you're doing some work, and then you go and have a beer. It's not too bad. We did one before lockdown with Beavertown, so one of the biggest breweries in the UK, and that was pretty cool. Going down to have a beer, and brew some beer with someone who really changed the brewing scene in the UK. And when we got there, Lee was like, "Okay, I'll climb into the mash tun and dig it out," and they're like, "Oh my god, you guys are the only brewery who've actually physically done any work." Well, because it's for their 7th birthday, wasn't it? They did 7 collabs, and none of the other breweries did any physical work. They just went down.
Whereas I was like, this is Beavertown. I want to be inside their kit, which I know sounds really weird.
Yeah.
Really weird. But as a brewer, you want to kind of be working with their kit. You want to do what you would be doing here in their place. I mean, these are people we had on a pedestal. Them, Thornbridge, Brewdog, Magic Rock. When we were thinking about doing this thing, they were the thing.
Yeah, and it's just again interesting to see how these things work. So I'm not sure if you guys know this, but Heineken invested quite heavily in Beavertown. So a lot of the craft beer scene have shunned Beavertown because of this. And people probably look at us a little bit funny for brewing with them, but at the same time, the guys who work there, the guy who owns it, still owns it. Has such a big influence on us as a brewery that we want to go and see and learn from them. So from quite a selfish perspective, there was a lot we could get from it.
We understand the sensitivity around working with someone like Heineken, but at the same time, we do today what we do because the likes of Beavertown, Brewdog, knocked down the doors to enable us to do what we do today. So we can't forget that.
And the guy who still majority owner of Beavertown is a guy called Logan Plant. His dad is the Robert Plant, who we met while we were doing it, which is pretty cool.
So we went down. We got proper starstruck.
We stood there. And we went down for the beer festival, and obviously we take our wacky beers down. We took 7.5% extra brownie pints. We took the collab with Brew by Numbers.
Sour grapes and silly japes.
Yeah, so I think we had a third line as well, but sour grapes silly japes was like an 8% pastry sour, 7.5% chocolate brownie stout, and then something else. And then we meet Robert Plant right at the start of the festival. He's like, "Oh, I'm sick of all these weird beers. I just want a pint of bitter. What have you guys brought?" And we're like, "You won't want any of our beer."
When he first came up to us, he was with Logan, and Logan's like, it's got name dropping, this is ridiculous. So Logan was like, "This is my brother and this is my dad." I was like, "We know who he is." That's Robert Plant. So then we did the kind of getting the selfie like this with like Robert Plant over the shoulder, and then send it to me, "Dad, look, Dad, it's Robert Plant."
Too embarrassed to ask him for a photo, so we just strategically stood near him at the festival and took photos of ourselves.
But you presume these people don't want to be approached and don't want to be talked to, so we just had some beers and left them to it. But yeah, we really went off at a tangent there.
Yeah, well, no, it's collabs. It was some of the things you gave from collabs. Sometimes it's specific about the beers and knowledge and brewing and things. Sometimes it's for our personal, we wanted to learn more, but also there's a real cool social side of it that you get from doing these as well.
And sometimes it's about working with your friends. So our best friends in the industry are probably Fairs.
Yeah, that's
so how many collabs have we done with them? They're a brewery based out of Aberdeen. So they've been down here a few times, we've been up there a few times.
And we're going up there again in a couple of months. That was their bar launch in Manchester last night, so that's where we went to for that.
So we kind of make a beer so we have the excuse to party together again. And another one along those lines would be Wild Weather.
Yeah, those guys,
they're based out of Reading. They do some cool beers, and their sales guy Ian is an absolute nutter. So I turned up there to do a collab. I think I got there about 8:30, and he popped a 10% dipper in my hand. So I hadn't even got across the car park, and he's already got this double IPA in my hand. And then he goes, "Brewery challenge!" And then he comes out with this little spoon and says, "You've got to have that. Everybody who comes here has that." So then I went, "Oh my God." He went, "Yeah, that was 1.5 million Scovilles." If you don't know what Scovilles are, that's the way in which we measure the heat intensity of chilies. And any natural chili doesn't have that level of heat. They actually have to manufacture something that's sadistic. And he gave me that, so then I had to down a couple of pints of a lactose sour to try and get away.
The only way I could stop it was by drinking more beer.
Well, you know when you have heat, you think milk. So I was like, "Have you got anything with lactose in?"
Yeah.
So then I got like this lactose sour, I had a couple of them. And after a while, I eventually stopped sweating. But, yeah, that was painful.
So what we're going to do now is just switch to questions, or go on to some questions from that have been sent in advance. And if you guys have any questions as well, feel free to fire them away. Also, if you want your trays removing, just put your hand up and someone will come and take them, because I guess it can be a bit uncomfortable after a while.
Well, while that's happening, we've got our first questions coming in here.
Broken first time.
If I give you a handful.
To get Liam on reading them this time. So Tim Curry, the Tim Curry. So
The Clue and It fame.
do you think a gingerbread beer would work?
Yes,
gingerbread
absolutely.
stout from Hardywood.
Hardywood,
One of the
amazing
best beers
stout.
in the world. It's awesome. No, it's a really cool, ingredient to work with. We haven't done anything like that yet.
You know, sometimes a brewery does something so well that if you were to attempt to do it, you know you'd only ever just be compared to that. So I would like to work with ginger in a beer, but I'm not sure we could do it as well as they do it.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we will. I'm sure we'll find a way to use it at some point in the future. Probably a variant of maybe one of our Christmas beers.
50 not out. What makes it cloudy? And I am also to say happy 50th on Wednesday. So what makes this particular beer cloudy is
Let's talk about the weather.
what makes this particular beer cloudy is a combination of things. So first of all, it's going to be your choice of cereal grains that you put into the beer. We use malted oats, malted wheat. They have smaller proteins. The smaller a molecule is, the longer it takes to fall out of the beer, so it stays hazy. So that's part of it. Part of it is something called polyphenols, which is a hop compound. And the more hops you put into something, the more of these polyphenols there are in the beer. So it's a combination really of those two things. And if you're using certain yeast strains as well, they are also not very good at falling out of the beer. So some of that might be left in the beer as well that could contribute to the haze.
We've got one from Stubo1. Are you looking forward to Edinburgh Craft Beer Festival, and will you be taking any special beer? So that's a good one, because obviously during coronavirus we haven't been able to do any beer festivals. We can't wait to actually host our own festivals again, but it's probably not going to be till next year when we'll be able to do anything like that. So yeah, this is the first one since lockdown, and it's basically a craft beer festival in Edinburgh, but you pay for your ticket and it's all inclusive. You get a seat, which is quite different for this festival. You're going to be seated, and you're going to be able to go to the bar and get you order your beer from the breweries, but you have to wear a mask when you go to the bar, and then come back, sit down at a safe social distance. So it'll be really interesting to see how it works. We're going up there, and it's going to be pretty cool. We're going to take some of the wacky beers we've been brewing during lockdown that we have kegs of that we haven't sold yet. We always tend to save some specials for festivals. So
Like guava carnet?
I'm pretty sure, and HYG will be making an appearance. It's one of those beers that you take to a festival.
The next one, Gareth Maynard. How do you design a grain bill? Well, that's not an easy one to answer. So I suppose the first thing is, how strong do you want that beer to be? More barley equals more sugar equals more alcohol. So your base malt, as it's called, just your plain pale barley is going to be the major component of any recipe. So it's really your strength that's going to govern how much you put in. Beyond that, it really does depend on what you're trying to achieve with the beer. If you're trying to do something kind of classically pale, where you're not wanting it hazy, you might not have much other than that pale in. If you wanted to do something hazy like this, we've already said you want some oats and some wheat. If you go into the kind of darker end of the spectrum, where you want some kind of caramelly character coming through, or some roasty or chocolatey character coming through, you're going to start to use things like caramel malts and brown malts and chocolate malts and roasted barley. Those kind of things have very intense characters, so you're going to use them in really small quantities. Something like roast barley, which is the kind of really intense coffee-like one, that is what gives Guinness its flavour, is so intense that probably less than 5% of all of the barley that you're going to be using is going to be of that type. For every kind of beer style, there is kind of defined guidelines of these are the types of cereal, these are the types of barley you should be using, and these are the kind of proportions that you should be using them in. I hope you enjoyed a nice close-up of Mr. De Sora, our sales director's posterior there, as he walked past the camera to deliver the latest drinks.
You can't miss them.
Quite good introduction there, because the next question is going to be heading his way. And Tom is a glamorous assistant. So from John Pierce, are you guys doing Collab Fest with Brewdog again this year? So I'll pass that on to our sales team to answer. Have we had any response yet?
Hopefully.
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 Oh, okay. You
So-
didn't get much more than that.
At this point in time, yeah, as always, we'd love to be involved. It's one of the iconic annual events. Last year we finished third.
Third during the weekend of the festival. And the way that they score it is basically using untapped feedback. And then since the festival, over the last few months, our score carried on rising and the others fell. So we actually went up to second overall.
So we should probably spell out what Collab Fest is. So Brewdog, you will know. Brewdog now has about 80 bars worldwide. Each year, every October, each of their bars collaborates with a local brewery to create a beer, generally local, and they create a beer, and then each one of those 80 beers is distributed to all 80 bars. And then they have a weekend, I think it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah, it's I think it goes to the Monday as well. I think they do a long weekend of it.
Where everybody goes in, they consume those beers, they go onto the social media beer rating app Untapped, they rate those beers, and they create a league table. And then in previous years, they've done things like you get to go to their AGM if you come near the top, you get to brew with them if you come near the top, and so forth. And we've finished near the top most times that we've competed.
Yeah, it's been pretty good. The beers that we got from it, so Goose Willis was a beer that we brewed for Collab Fest that then we liked so much we brought back as a permanent beer. Last year it was Tonk Oatco, the vegan-friendly version of Tonk Coco that we did. And the good news is because we finished in the top three, they've actually basically asked us to brew it again this year. So pre-Collab Fest, they'll be doing a little festival in their bars, and Tonk Coco will be back for that festival. So that's pretty cool. And then we're hoping to work with one of the Brewdog bars again to brew the beer for the festival, but we'll have to wait and see what happens with that one.
So before we do more of these, have we got any questions in the room?
Yeah, why not?
So if you just wait for the microphone to come to you.
John will film you as well, so you can be on camera.
So this beer is obviously named after somebody local. So how else are your beers linked to the local area apart from just naming perhaps after a famous person?
Well, they all have the name Brew York on them.
Yes, so in terms of the ingredients that go into the beers, we don't use English hops. So it's something that both myself and Lee don't really have a taste for. We don't really enjoy English hops, so we don't brew using them. Most of the hops we use are American, and that's part of the name Brew York. It's a pun on New York because we were heavily influenced by American beer. But in terms of local, Lee was born in York.
Well,
I moved a while back.
Our barley, the major component of our beer, Comes from a maltster that has 2 locations in the UK. One is Stowmarket down south, the other is Bridlington. So it's entirely possible that some of our malt could be coming from Yorkshire. If we wanted to pay a premium, we could ensure that our malt came from Yorkshire. But because I'm a Yorkshireman, we will not pay that premium. So some of our malt may be from Yorkshire. The more specialty things, the kind of caramels, the roasty ones, we source them from all over the world. From as far afield as Canada, I think is the furthest afield. We get one of our malts from a honey malt. And yeah, Germany, Belgium, etc.
Yeah, and we work with other local companies as well. So we did a beer during lockdown called Chocolate Story. You can guess that was with Chocolate Story.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was we sourced the cacao from those guys. We came up with the recipe and idea with them. Unfortunately, the festival that we brewed it for didn't happen because of lockdown, did it?
No.
So
I think we brewed quite a few things that weren't required.
But you guys all supported us and bought the beer, so the beer's sold anyway. But yeah, a lot of the festivals that we were doing them for didn't happen, unfortunately.
Any more questions in the room?
With the beers that you're bringing back that you don't brew all the time, how easy is it to get them tasting like they did last time?
Well, hopefully if we're only releasing them once a year, you've forgotten how they tasted. No, sorry. No, we are pretty anal when it comes to data collection around our brewing. So at every stage of the process, we are always recording different bits of data around the pH, etc. So we try to do the best we can, but at the end of the day, we're a craft brewer. We don't have the kind of analytical departments that your big craft brewers have. So I think we do a pretty damn good job of getting close and replicating what we've done before. But there's probably going to be a little bit more wriggle room with what we do versus, say, your Heinekens of the world.
And Lee's a perfectionist. He's always trying to improve the recipe. So even if it should be brewed, even if we were rebrewing a beer, the recipes might be tweaked slightly in between rebrews.
Yeah, I'm definitely what you would refer to as a tinkerman.
The little tinker.
No, I don't know if it's just a general brewer thing, but people say, oh, I love that beer. And I'll be like, yeah, but it would be better if we did this, this and this. So all the time I'm always identifying something that I want to change. So our core range, yeah, most of that's fairly settled now, but even some of that I'm still constantly tweaking to make that a little bit better.
Cool.
So those ones we've not done, but I think we've probably done enough questions at this point. Should we move on to
I've only read
next
the next beer.
So I'll hold those ones back.
So one of the things you might notice
And I'll
about
move
this
them
beer
there.
is the strategically placed sticker near the ingredients, where our proofreading process failed, unfortunately, and we have to hand sticker every single can because we forgot to include an allergen.
Yeah, I forgot about this one.
Yeah, ingredients on cans is a legal requirement, especially if it's an allergen. So yeah, we had to
So I'll point those, mate. You
add that back. So this beer, obviously Ripple Twister, beer we brought out a few years back, and unfortunately got completely overshadowed by Rhubarbre. Rhubarbre Streisand came out at the same time and just overwhelmed this beer, and it was crazy because we thought this was going to be the best of the two beers, and personally I still do think that. But Rhubarbre sales just went nuts, and no one even really talked about this beer when it came out. So it was great to be able to bring it back this year. So we put it on the polls, and you guys voted for it. So it's not a production fault. It is supposed to be pink. It's got a lot of raspberry in it. It's also got, like I mentioned earlier with the allergen, it's also got lactose in it. So this is a Ice Cream IPA. So 6.5% Ice Cream IPA. It's your beer, this one, isn't it, to talk about?
Yeah. Oh, so it is. Right. So Ice Cream IPAs are a fairly unusual style. It's something I first became aware of back in 2016. So there's a brewery in the US called Tired Hands, and they did a collab with Omnipollo. Everybody must know Omnipollo, the kind of brewing gods from Sweden. And they released a beer that I actually forget the name of right now, but they did this Ice Cream IPA. And then what they did to replicate this kind of ice cream-like mouthfeel was to use a lot of apple puree in the boil. So this particular beer has 215 kilos of apple puree that goes directly into the kettle. So that means 15% of what's in there is apple puree. So it doesn't taste like apple because we boiled it. It wasn't about getting the flavour of apple into the beer. It was about getting the pectin into the beer that is in the apples. So pectin is this heteropolysaccharide. I did well there.
Wife's name.
It's a heteropolysaccharide,
Sorry.
and yeast does not have the enzymes to be able to break that down. So it ends up in the beer, and that's why it's really hazy, and that's why it feels thick and kind of smoothie-like. So that's part of how we create the ice cream. And then the other element is the use of lactose, which is creamy. It makes it feel thicker. It leaves it feeling sweeter. And in here, what makes it an Ice Cream IPA is we've used hops that have berry-like character. So we've used Mosaic and we've used Equinox, which for once I said right. I always say it is Euconaut because we released a Wimbledon season beer called You Cannot Be Serious. But it's Equinox. It used to be called Equinox, but the people that held the trademark there was a brewery called Equinox and they sued the company that had this hop and then they had to change the name, so now it's called Equinox. Another famous example of that is now a hop in Australia, Ella. If I was to tell you it had 2 letters before, what do you think that hop used to be called? Anyone?
Think of lager.
If I said wife beater, wife beater, Stella. Yeah, so that hop used to be called Stella, they got sued by Stella, so that hop's now called Ella. So it's quite a delicate balancing act to create this kind of beer where you've got the sweetness, you've got the lactose, you've got the hops, you've got the fruits, you've got the vanilla. And I have to say, drinking this, when did we package this? About 3 weeks in? This actually feels a lot more balanced now. I was expecting to sit here tonight and say, well, I think we should have maybe got up with the raspberry. I think the Euconaut, the Equinox. I got to tie myself in knots with that one. Was too prominent in it. That can be quite grassy if you don't use it in the right way. For me, I think we probably could go a little bit more raspberry in this next time.
Yeah, I mean,
but other than that, I am pretty happy with the results here.
It's got a lot of fruit in it. Obviously, it's pink, but you still taste the hops. You can still taste the IPA characteristics of it. Whereas you have this alongside something like rhubarb Streisand, which is a rhubarb pale. That is rhubarb. You don't really taste the beer side of that beer. Whereas this, you are getting the beer balance as well as the fruit flavour. So it's something beer I really liked, and also I think the can artwork was awesome. The guys at United by Design do all our cans, and it was such a shame that we brought it out and we didn't really get to. It's been a long time since we brewed it, so it was great to be able to get that design back out.
And I'd have to second what Wayne says. I'd much rather be drinking this than rhubarb, but I know that's probably a contrarian opinion. I think most people like the rhubarb versus this one. Yeah. So in terms of why we've called it that name, it's a very delicate matter to discuss. If you're in school at the point that I was in the sort of 80s, 90s, kids used to torture each other with a particular type of manoeuvre that I can't really expand on. But that is the inspiration behind the name for this particular beer. Okay, so at this point, we don't have an additional subject to discuss. We really wanted to take advantage of having a live audience here. So we wanted to do some more questions at this point. So I'm glad to see we have a list coming out over here. So should we maybe start there?
Yeah. Unfortunately, my first question you already answered, which is going to be the next big co-op. You've already done that one. The next one is the funniest name you've come up with but have not used.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I was going
to say, are we allowed to?
Yeah, I have immediately just thought of a few that once that camera's turned off, ask me again. But I definitely cannot say these on camera. You got any?
There's some really cool ones. It's not that we haven't been able to use them. It's just we haven't had a chance to yet. So the one I really liked the other day was about the cannoli. Sam posted it. We have a team. What's it called? It's called Slack. It's a messaging group for workplaces. and we have a name ideas thread on there. So if people come up with ideas for names, they post it on there, and we try and sometimes brew the beer around the name.
So one was, so cannoli being the Italian kind of dessert type thing. One was Obi-Wan cannoli.
No, that was the follow-up, wasn't it? What was that?
But there was one before that. Anybody? Can you remember what the one was before that? So we've got
Tony
somebody
Cannoli,
with...
though.
Things can load.
Oh yeah.
Oh, things can only get better. so yeah, we still have a few in the bag.
Cool.
But if they were that good, we've probably used them already. But
Yeah, you've probably seen them. If we don't sit on many for a while. We did sit on Olivia Gluten Gone for a while.
We did,
We had that name for a while, and again, Sam had come up with that idea. But we already had a gluten-free beer out, and gluten-free is a funny one because you really can't taste much difference in the beer. It's not. It doesn't have a massive impact on the flavour, but a lot of people see gluten-free and it puts them off. They think the beer's not going to be great, so they're a bit of a funny beer to market and sell. So with us having a gluten-free beer out, we didn't want to bring another one out straight away and then have people turn their nose up on it. But yeah, Olivia Gluten Gone was a really cool one.
the thing that amazes me about gluten-free beers is you drink them all the time. You just don't know you're doing it. The enzyme that is used to make a beer gluten-free is the enzyme that is also used to make a beer clear.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the beers that you're consuming are clear, have been treated with the very same enzyme that makes it gluten-free. So when we get like feedback through Untapped, it's I can taste where the gluten's gone. Trust me, you can. There is absolutely no difference in terms of the appearance, the body, any of that. It just makes some of the molecules in it a little bit smaller, so they're not allergenic anymore. Anyway, we've gone on a tangent again.
Yeah, no.
So, any more questions in the room before we go to the ones we've got online? One at the back over there.
Is there a flavour that you really wanted to use in a drink but you can't get it to work because it tastes horrible when you try and brew it with beer stuff?
Rhubarb? No, I'm kidding.
There's one we've brewed with a few times where it's not quite turned out the way we hoped. So passion fruit. Passion fruit we've used in a few different things. We have it in juice foresight, and I think that's the only time we've got it in the right kind of balance where it actually works. But we've used it in a couple of sours and it goes really quite funky.
Yeah,
so we're not putting it in a sour again.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate thing. It gives off a really eggy smell. So you open a can and you're like, I don't really want to drink that. And yeah, we did when Passion turned sour. And what was the other one? The Mos Eisley, the first version of Mos Eisley. So Mos Eisley Catarina was a Brazilian style sour, so Catarina sour. And we did a Star Wars. Sorry, no, we didn't do a Star Wars. We did an inspired themed can to go with that. And it was really disappointing because the name and the branding on the can was much better than the beer, unfortunately, on that. But we loved it, so we're gonna have to bring that back. And what we'll probably do is every time we rebrew that beer, we'll use different fruit additions. So this year's version's in tank at the moment. That's coconut and mango. Mango.
Coconut, guava, and lime.
So that's going to be pretty interesting. And then we'll keep that. That's going to become like our friends across in Leeds, North Brewing. They do a triple fruited goes, and they're known for that style, and they just use different fruits each time, and it's really really good. And that's the type of thing we want Mos Eisley to become, where we brew it lots of times, but different fruits every time, and see what people think of them.
Okay, should we go to one of the online questions? So Mersey beers. Whose beers have the best wrestling puns? Yourselves or the mighty Top Rope Brewery? I think we're going to have to tip our caps rather to Top Rope on that one.
Papa Mango.
Papa Mango, yeah. I mean, it's absolutely their thing. Although I would have to say the best one I've ever heard was neither of us. It was Marble when they did
Bret the Hitman Tart.
Bret the Hitman Tart. That was my favourite particular wrestling pun.
Yeah, we had Triple H. It was hoppy, hazy, heavenly, and that's where the name came from. And then a couple of dipped our toes with a couple of the wrestling themed ones, but it isn't necessarily our thing. And then Top Rope set up a couple of years back now, didn't they? We actually met the guys at Dead Crafty Beer in Liverpool. one of the guys used to work the bar there, and got talking to them, and the guy and they were like, oh, here's the Brew guys. They used one of your beer names, and we were like, did we? We didn't know that. And then we looked into it, and yeah, when it was...
Well, I knew that. I had called it Triple H for that reason, but because, yeah, I was a kid of the 80s, and I used to collect all the stickers.
No, I knew it was a wrestling, but I didn't realise they brewed a beer that we'd had the same name on.
Oh, okay. I mean, they were only just getting into brewing at that point. Like you said, they were working full-time in that bar and doing it as a bit of a side project. But now, yeah, they have a brewery and they're knocking out some cracking beers. Okay. You can have that one. This one's definitely from me. Does that say Alison?
Yeah.
So Alison is asking me, how does beer fit into a keto diet? It doesn't, but we're all allowed days off. Yeah.
So Catherine Payne has asked, how do you find artists for your can illustrations? They look amazing. I mentioned them earlier, United by Design are a York-based company. I first met Owen, the guy who owns it, probably 6 years ago now, before we started the brewery, when we were putting the feelers out for branding companies, and got on board really quickly. We just loved what they were doing, and they understand what our weird ideas, and sometimes we can be a bit specific in what we ask for, and it can end up a bit weird, like Kylie Goes Lassie, which, if any of you saw that, erase it from your memory.
Yeah, not I find it stellar.
It was a really daft idea, but we then asked them to design a can with Kylie riding on the back of a dog.
Yeah, but the way I kind of see it is, if they push back and go, you want us to do what?
Yeah.
Then we've got a good idea.
Yeah, and so they've done some pretty cool stuff for us over the years. We really need to get a can of every single one we've done and line them up so we can start seeing them, because it's I tried to do it in my garden shed, but the wind keeps blowing them over, so I need the guys to fill it with water on the canning line or something.
So I think this is Rich S. So happy to see Big Red Munster back on keg. Any plans to release it in cans again? So Big Red Munster was the beer that we did with Top Rope, which was lemongrass and kaffir, lime leaf and cherry.
Yeah, so because of COVID, when we during lockdown, we obviously still keg some of our beers, because when we finish canning, there's beer left, and we put that into keg. And with bars not being open, we couldn't sell it. So as soon as bars reopened, we sold out pretty much all the beers that we'd been sitting on. So someone must have bought a Big Red Monster, and that's why you've seen it. We haven't rebrewed it. So.
No immediate plans to rebrew that one. It's got some ingredients in there that we really like working with. I really like lemongrass, particularly in a salad.
That was pretty strong in that.
You've done. Yeah, we probably went a little bit too extreme in that one with the kaffir lime leaf. There was definitely a bit of cleaning product flavour to it at the back end.
Yeah. But 50 Not Out has asked, what is a hop? So a hop is a relative of the cannabis plant. That's so they do smell pretty interesting when they haven't been used, but they're a vine-based plant that basically pretty intense once you start growing them, but they take 2 to 3 years to even be able to get to a stage where you can actually harvest them and use them. I haven't done a brewery tour in ages. This is the part of the spiel they used to talk about a lot.
I can
so
really
Lee'll probably kick in.
So if you were to visit a hop plantation, what you would see is a field full of telegraph poles with wires strung between them, and then you'd have the hop vines, or vines as they're called, strung up against these things. So, like Wayne said, yes, they are very closely related to the cannabis plant. Much like the cannabis plant, it's only the female one that's going to be of any use, because what you're looking to get is the flower or the bud or the cone, as it's called. The male really is only there for propagation, for the sex bit. So in the hop, cone sizes are going to vary. They're going to be about this to about this. And inside there we have a substance called lupulin. Kind of looks like pollen. It's kind of yellow and sticky like pollen. It's not pollen. It's a combination of lots of different organic compounds. So far they've identified about 500 different unique compounds in there. One of them is something called an alpha acid, and that is what gives all beers their bitterness. When you expose that particular compound to high temperature, as you're going to do in your kettle when you boil your sugary wort, it changes into a form that becomes intensely bitter. So that's how all beers get their bitterness. The other 499 or so compounds that we find in the hop are all to do with aroma and flavour. And they are also found in things like the skins of an orange and so forth. So when somebody says that hop makes this beer taste really citrusy, it's because you're going to find that particular compound in the hop also in the skin of the orange. So these 499 compounds are all incredibly volatile. So how you introduce the hops, at what temperature, at what stage, is going to influence how much of this flavour that you retain from that hop. But they are magnificent things. There's hundreds of species. What the species is going to influence the flavour, where you grow it is going to influence the flavour. Very much like
Grapes.
the wine world, you'll have heard the term terroir, which is the environmental factors that influence the growth of something. So in the wine world, that's why we get these vintage beers, because
Beers.
vintage wines rather, because in that particular year the environmental factors came together in such a way that led to a really good grape, and from that really good grape they got a really good wine. So it's very similar with hops. The things that are going to really affect the hop's growth is light intensity and water supply, and that changes from year to year. So sometimes you get good harvest, sometimes you don't, sometimes you get good crops, sometimes you don't. So the flavour even of one particular variety can change a little bit from one year to the next. So that's why when you get to sufficient scale, as we hope to be at some point, you get invited to go to the US and you select your own specific crop that you want for your beers. But one day they will.
Yeah.
One day.
As you can tell, Lee can talk about this subject for a long time.
I love I love the background. I love the science to beer.
There's
Don't get me
so
going.
much to it, but yeah, a hop is a plant, and it's one of the elements we use for flavour and aroma in our
Sure,
beer.
that was one question, wasn't it?
So here's a good one from Alan Smith. Can you use oat or almond extracts to replace lactose to open the beer up to more people? Yes.
I don't know about almond, but we've definitely done
Oat milk,
before.
yeah, we used oat milk. So I mentioned earlier the Colab Fest. So Colab Fest is Tonk Oat Co. We called it Tonk Oat Co because it used oat milk instead of lactose. So that gave us the creamy mouthfeel still, not quite the same. The final beer was, in my opinion, Tonkoco was much, Imperial Tonkoco, because that was
And it doesn't have the
match.
sweetness that lactose does, so you have to use something called maltodextrin, which is what you make candy floss out of.
But yeah, you definitely can, and we did it with our Fairytale Brew last year, which is our Christmas beer. We did that one as a vegan friendly.
The real challenge to using oat milk in a beer is, I see this on like the kind of brewing forums all the time. Can anybody tell me where you can get oat milk in anything other than a 1 litre carton?
So yeah, pouring one litre at a time.
No, so we have to contact Booker's, our cash and carry, and say, I need 200 1 litre cartons. We have to contact them many weeks in advance, and then we have to stand there pouring in each of these two. We cannot find anywhere that will give us oat milk in anything larger than a 1 litre package, which is ridiculous. So that's your project to take away, guys. You need to find me a source of oat milk in more than 1 litre.
So part of the interesting thing about the Colab Fest is we set Roddy, our production manager, a challenge of trying to make our own oat milk. So we have a pilot kit which is a lot smaller than our main brew house, and he went away and had a very frustrating day with the heating elements in the kettle, the vessel that warms up the liquid. Just got coated in oat and just burnt and scoured, and it tasted like the oat milk that we created tasted like
It tastes like a smoke beer. Yeah. So yes, you can make oat milk yourself. The way in which to do that is to soak oats in water, put them in something like a muslin bag, squeeze it, you get the milk out. What you end up with is a suspension. So it's still kind of powdery in there, and what happened there was that powder then sat on the element and scorched the entire beer. So thus ended our journey with trying to do it ourselves. We will not do that again.
No. So I've got another one from Mersey Beers. Having brewed a cherry version of Tonkoco, would you consider different fruit or adjuncts with Tonkoco? Yeah, definitely. We've toyed with the idea of a few different ones. be interesting to hear people's thoughts and suggestions on what you'd like us to do it with. I think as a one-off, you could do all sorts of weird things, but I don't know if you'd want a whole batch of it. So like a mint ton cocoa or something, which sounds nice, but chocolate orange ton cocoa and all sorts of interesting ideas you can come up with.
Didn't you want to do a salted caramel?
Salted caramel. The other one was, which we kind of done now, but the marshmallow and ton cocoa.
Well, it keeps getting put on the back burner, but we've teased you guys quite a few times with the collab that we still plan to do with Tiny Rebel, which would be the amalgamation of the stir puffed and the ton cocoa, so the coconut and the marshmallow. We'd like to.
Stop making sounds.
And I think
Go now, just go.
once we get to the end and we talk about our upcoming news, that might make it easier.
Yeah.
So that's another teaser to wait until the end to find out what that meant.
So got one from Chris Morley. So I thought I just read that one again. Speaking of ton cocoa, how did you use oat milk to replace lactose? So when we brew ton cocoa, the lactose goes into the kettle when we're boiling the wort. So you extract the sugary liquid, the sugar from the oats. You have a sugary liquid called wort. We transfer that into the kettle, and then we heat it up and boil it. When we're brewing a beer with lactose in it, that's when you introduce the powdered lactose. With oat milk, you do exactly the same. You add the oat milk into the kettle instead of the lactose.
Yeah, but both of them usually about 15 minutes from the end of the hour that we're going to boil it for. So yeah, very similar. So, come here, Bill Guppy, any plans to make a pumpkin beer for autumn/Halloween? Well, we can easily answer that one. Not here, but at S43, we will be producing that one.
Another pretty easy one, so from Bill 702260. Fancy doing an advent calendar this year? Yes, we will be doing a Christmas themed. We're not going to be calling it 12 Beers of Christmas this year because we were asked to not. Someone's apparently trademarked that. But yeah,
I mean, I know it's not like us to step on someone else's trademark.
But yeah, like everyone was calling them 12 Beers of Christmas last year, so there was a lot of cease and desist issued, I think, by a company. But yeah, we're going to do something this year, so maybe take it up to a 24 pack and do the full works. But yeah,
But we'll do it on one condition: you all sit down and do it in one day.
say it all for last day.
Gareth Maynard, can you clear up the debate over what ABV a triple IPA is and what is the difference between an Imperial and a triple? Right, I'll take that one. So what a standard strength beer, a double strength beer and a triple strength beer used to mean is, say you use 200 kilos of barley to make your standard beer. A double would involve using 400 kilos of barley. A triple would involve using 600 kilos of barley. That is not the way in which it works now. There are these BJCP guidelines. So there are defined guidelines for almost any beer style that you can think of, which will say that the gravity at which you start the beer must be here, where you end it must be here, the strength must be this, the bitterness must be this, and the colour must be this. For all of those different things, there are parameters in which you should be. So I think if we're talking American IPAs, I'm going to put this out there, but I might be wrong, but I think somewhere between sort of 6 and 8% is your standard. So 8 to 10 is your double. Anything more than 10 tends to be considered a triple. I think that's about how it's defined now, rather than it being about how much malt you put into the particular beer.
So
I'm going to have to fact check that one at the end. But when's that ever bothered Trump, eh?
Got one from Spoon Pirate. How do you come up with the pun names? Is there a rigorous testing?
With a name like that, it sounds like they should be naming the beers.
There's no testing. We just talk to each other and see what we think. And if we like it, if we laugh or think it's good enough, then it'll usually make its way into a beer.
Ewan York? Out of interest, what is the sensitivity you mentioned about Heineken? Is it just that they're massive, etc., or is there some specific scandal? I'm going to be political in answering this one, and so I suggest you go onto Google and Googled Heineken and why people might consider that sensitive. I don't think that's something we need to get into right now.
In general, though, the reason that people don't like multinational breweries investing in craft breweries is because the multinational breweries already own 90% of the market share. Their beers are sold to pretty much everywhere, and once they start buying up breweries, the breweries then usually aren't as creative and able to do what the type of things they used to do.
Yeah, their market share has been diminishing for years. Craft beer is growing and growing and growing. The way that Big Beer tried to counter that was to create pseudo-craft. So they created their own brands under which they would attempt to do craft-style beers. But those pseudo-craft entities are still run by accountants, so they still won't use the best ingredients. They still won't use them in the right quantity. They're just trying to make some money at the end of the day. So that fell on its ass. So they decided if they can't beat them at their own game, what they're now doing is they're buying these kind of companies up to try and eliminate the competition that way.
We got approached in our first year by Green King actually to ask if we'd take part in it. They were doing 12 collabs in a year, and it was part of if you brewed with them, you'd be in all their pubs for a month with that beer. We spoke to them about it. We said, well, we don't want to be offensive, but you do a beer called Green King IPA, and it's not an IPA. It's about 4%. It's
not even that. It's 3 point something.
And so yeah, if we were to do something with you, we would have to insist on using this amount of ingredients, raw ingredients and stuff, because that's the type of beers we make. And they basically told us that the accountants would say no. Well, we'll say no then, thanks.
Yeah, they were stunned when we turned around and said, we don't want to work with you. And they were like, really? Yeah, we don't want to work with you. Sorry.
Yeah, it was a...
Not us being arrogant, but like, yeah.
We've been hurried up because we should be on the next beer by now. You guys are waiting.
In that case, we'll put those to one side and I'll hold these ones back for next time.
It's a bit daft having a watch on, but the watch has run out of battery and I can't actually check the time, so I don't know how we're doing. But,
so we'll hold them back. So we are now on to this one.
So everyone's got the beer in front of them, hopefully. We've got a thing for pink beers today, I think. Katy Berry's the next up. So Katy Berry was one of my favourite beers we brewed last year. We brought it out at the same time as Simon Le Mans. We launched those two beers at London Craft Beer Festival, August last year. I really like it. I really like the real fruity blueberry flavour that comes through, and the fact that it doesn't taste very strong. It's only 4.5%, so it's not too bad. But yeah, it made a really cool beer that we put into a really cool slushy beer. So we have I've not seen it. We have a soft serve machine, and you can basically put beers or cocktails or things into it, and you can make some really cool creations. So John in the corner usually comes up with something pretty interesting. Liam every now and then, but or John just pinches his ideas. But yeah, they make some really interesting soft serves, and you can basically take the beer like this and you top it up with a little bit of the frozen version, cools the beer down at the same time, and makes for nice flavour. Yeah, it was pretty good. But yeah, we brought this out August, and then it sold out really quickly. And we don't tend to bring beers back out too quickly, so we waited until this year. Brought it out again during COVID, and I missed it. I don't know how, but I didn't get any cans when we had it. So,
yeah, and then we held this vote, and even though we'd only released it about a month before the vote, you guys all wanted it back, despite the other options. And well, what can I say? Hats off to you. It's an awesome beer. So I'm glad we were able to drink it again.
So it's a pastry sour. So sour beers are obviously quite divisive because not everyone likes the sourness in a beer. But the difference between a standard sour and a pastry sour is that we try and replicate that dessert-like flavour. So we put vanilla in it, lactose in it, so you're getting a creaminess and a dessert-like taste,
and
as
some,
well as the sourness.
Maltodextrin as well, which is that candy floss stuff we referred to earlier.
So yeah, Katy Berry's, I'd describe it as tart rather than sour. It's not intense. It's not going to make you pull a face. Well, it might make you pull a face, but it's not intended to be that sour. and the fruitiness balances it out. One of the things about this beer is that we use a hell of a lot of blueberry in it, and if you've ever bought blueberry, you'll know how expensive they are. So this is the type of beer that a multinational brewery wouldn't be able to make, because they wouldn't be able to justify the price of the ingredients. And what we unfortunately have to do is pass that cost on. We're going to use the ingredients, but we're going to cost the beer based on what went into it. So this is quite an expensive beer because of the blueberries, but I think it's worth it. It's only 4.5%, so it can be quite scary sometimes when you see a 4.5% beer and it costs as much as a 7.5% beer. But, yeah, effectively you get what you put into it. If you put really good quality ingredients in, you usually get a good beer at the end.
And we put a hell of a lot of vanilla in this as well. In fact, this particular version has more vanilla than any version we've done before.
It never tells me these things when I'm doing the costings.
Well, Roddy didn't tell me until quite late on.
Oh, right.
But for me, it actually makes for the best version of this beer that we've done, I think. We've done 3 versions so far, and I prefer this of all the ones we've released thus far.
Yeah, no, it's really good. It's I mean, what do you guys think? Because you guys don't like sours, do you?
First sour I've liked.
Yeah.
I normally avoid sours.
Convert.
Kerry buys them, goes, oh, this is gorgeous, taste it, and a bit like with wine,
Yeah.
I read the label and go, look, that's just a lie, because it smells great, and I taste it and go,
Yeah.
I think the beauty of the
Actually,
pastry sour style.
that's the first sour I've had that I would drink that again.
Yeah, I suspect that's because of it being a pastry sour.
Probably,
Because
yeah.
you get that kind of upfront, kind of really refreshing, really exciting sharpness, but then it doesn't finish that way. Because then you finish with the sweetness. And in standard sour, you would never describe it as sessionable. You're not going to smash them back. Whereas something like this, which has that kind of sweet finish to it, I think you can session something like this.
That's like
You
a
maybe
mango
shouldn't,
and
but you
apple
can.
pie in a glass. That's lovely.
Yeah, well done, guys.
Okay.
Do you think with the blurb and can art on this one, you might be skating towards another?
We asked when if you remember, I can't think of her name now. Ellie Goulding got married in York, didn't she, last year? And one of her guests was Katy Perry. So we tried to tweet or message and ask them to come down to enjoy their beer, but they didn't really want to.
But yes, we are, as we often do, walking the line. So yes, that could happen. It's not happened so far. I think most people see it as the kind of tongue-in-cheek tribute that it's meant to be. It's not always that way. I mean, another brewery got sued by Mary Berry for doing a beer called Mary Berry that they put berry into.
And that was the when we came up with that name, we're thinking Mary Berry, Katy Berry. Mary Berry is obviously makes cakes, so it'd be quite a good name to use it. But we also thought that it's also not as famous as Katy Berry, so Perry. So
The guys at S43, are they?
yeah, Snickers.
One that
Yeah.
So that came out at the same time as we had the HYG thing.
Is it to do with the fonts and the trademarks, or is it specifically names? And
It's going to depend on the circumstances and who you're dealing with. With the beer that we're constantly trying to not refer to, we may have received a 10-page document that did point by point of where we crossed the line.
Yeah.
We may have received that, but obviously if that was the case, I wouldn't be able to tell you about it.
Yeah, it's little things that, so normally we're a bit more rigorous about it. So when we come up with a name, an idea, look at the artwork, we all sit down and we work out what we can and can't do. But it was in the middle of coronavirus, and we were a lot of people were on furlough at that point in time. We were quite small team, and we were just trying to get the beers out there. So we didn't go through the same procedures as we probably would have. And
But I think a lot of what we attempt to do is we look at our experiences, our childhood, things that have meant something to us while we've been growing up. And in that particular instance, not only to us, I think to a hell of a lot of people out there, that was truly iconic. It's a film that stands up today.
it's so
I still watch it almost every year.
I guess the
I might not
trademark
watch
is
it in
not-
quite the same way now, but
It's not a trademark of kind of cartoon ugly faces, is it?
Yeah.
It's, possibly a phrase.
Oh no, the phrase was fine. So what we named it was absolutely fine. It was to do with the artwork on the camera. But yeah,
in multiple ways.
the bit that disappointed me was that we had a lot of fun with that because it it was during lockdown. It was well, it wasn't quiet. We were busy canning, but it was quite different to what we used to do. So we ordered the mask off eBay, and it was just so funny. And it was just that stupidity to make us laugh during the day while we were doing while we're trying to keep things running was amusing.
Just sneaking up on it, going, "Hey, you go!"
With the can art being the issue, does that land on you guys or?
Yeah, ultimately
design guys?
we sign it off. It's our product art anyway.
They've only done what we asked them to do, so that's totally us.
It's your fault.
Yeah, absolutely. Mea culpa. We hold our hands up to that.
Yeah, so it can be interesting. One of the really cool ones that we do is Juice Campbell versus the Army of Dankness, and we get regularly messages on Twitter from Bruce Campbell, the actor who plays Ash in the film.
In the Evil Dead.
He's always sharing our messages, and all of a sudden we get inundated with American fans who are just like, we really want this beer. I don't care how much it's going to cost. How do we get it in America? And like, we just can't get it out there to you. So it's a shame because
we always say "Hail to the King" because that's kind of the catchphrase for the thing, and he often replies with "groovy," which was his thing. So. Yeah, I mean that's the spirit in which we target it.
Yeah.
That's the spirit in which we hope it's going to be received. Sometimes it's going to work. Sometimes apparently it's not.
So is it a case you try it and it works out brilliantly, or you get sued? Those are the two options.
Well, more and more often we are trying to have a rigorous process in place where we don't walk that line, and we try to make sure that it's not too sensitive. But I guess we're not probably cracking that.
It's a difficult one because we don't do it to play off. We don't by us putting an association on the can like that. We're not expecting that to drive their fans to buy our product. Our product would sell anyway, especially during coronavirus. We're bringing a beer out and it'd be sold out within a week, which is awesome. It was more the fun, and we want people to enjoy it when they see it and stuff, rather than them not have any clue what the beer is or what the flavour is, and they just want it because it's got so and so's name on it. That's not what we're doing. And if that happened, then we'd try and change the name. Because,
I'd like to hope that perhaps our silly names, perhaps our daft artwork, attracted you initially to our brand, but I would hope it's the actual contents of the can that made you stick with us. I hope it's the quality that you get in there that made you an ambassador, I think. You're here today because you entered a competition.
Is there a name for your fans? So,
Well, we have Brew Yorkers, which is
and
that came from when we did the crowdfunding for next door. So when we opened the beer hall, we did. I always forget the number, but we raised about £56,000, I think, from people doubling their basically investing in us and doubling their money, being able to spend it here, which was awesome. It was a chance for us to give something back, and it got us. Yeah, got that place up and running a lot quicker than if we'd have done it the traditional.
So we refer to them as our Brew Yorkers. Do we have a general name for everyone? No.
I will give you my actual
we have a suggestion.
because I did actually put this on it. Brew Yorkers. I did put that. Love the artwork. Will you ever bring out the can work as prints?
This one's available on our website at the moment. We've got more available. We've got more designs that we were just testing the.
It feels so commercial doing that.
People have got pub sheds.
So this is the only one we've done thus far. This was kind of the proof of concept. I believe it sold quite well. And that said, I think we're going to be doing a few more of these, aren't we, John?
Yeah,
limited sort of like 50 prints at a time just to see.
Yeah.
The real challenge is shipping them.
A juice foresight special.
Yeah, exactly. And
I think we know who'll be buying one if we do.
Yes, the one that always.
Not actually a fan. Great guy. God rest his
he's
soul.
kind of juice was.
Yeah. It was just that was the beer we had in house at the time.
But yeah, no, we think that there's a lot of a lot of love out there. I mean, Alison sat in the corner, pretty much wanted art. We used to have artwork on the walls in here, and she had her eye on the Big Eagle one we had as soon as we opened the tap room. And when we refurbished it, how many, was it 12 months ago now? It must be more than that.
As soon as we took it off the wall, it went walkies, didn't it,
It
Alison?
disappeared into Alison's house.
I asked. Nobody said no, so it went like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so the cool thing we've got to talk about now is this little interlude is our something we've mentioned a few times. It's our beer subscription. We're finally ready to launch our beer subscription. So it's a monthly beer club. Basically, you sign up and it'll be 36 or 37 pound a month. Right. 37 pound a month. You get 9 beers in the pack. You'll get a booklet with information about how the beer tasting notes, and the 4 beers in that pack will be part of this feature. So we'll do the live tasting based on those 4 beers as well. You can still obviously buy just the 4 beers and join the tasting if you want to anyway. So it's you don't have to be part of the can club to experience that. But we had some really cool box prototypes made up, and
We think it's kind of cool, but we're geeks, so what would we know? So yeah, we've had a custom box designed, which has the name on it, which we're calling the Drinking Outside the Box.
So yeah, we've got so every month you'll get the 9 beers, but once you've been a member for a few months, you'll get gifts as well. So basically, to reward loyalty and to incentivise people to stay as members, there'll be glassware, T-shirts, things like that, gifts every now and then. That'll be in part of the box. So yeah, it's pretty cool. It's just less hassle than trying to remember to buy the sets and stuff.
Is that going to be exclusive? So you'll only do your beers through that? You're not going to start appearing in other, perhaps less good subscription boxes?
Every now and then, so during lockdown in particular, when we put a couple of beers out there, we put one into Beer 52 back at the start of coronavirus, and we did one last month at Beer 52 as well. Because every now and then the opportunity comes up to do a dedicated batch for them, and it's a huge volume of beer. So when pubs weren't open, it was a great chance for us to still continue supplying beer. But what you'll find is those beers that go into the other subscription clubs will be different to what we sell normally. So there'll be 3 30ml cans for a start, and they'll usually be one of our core ranges.
Yeah, there's no real constraints to what we're going to put in here. This is going to be the best of what we have to offer you. This is going to be the latest releases.
So we've also got the. Have we told everyone yet about our state of mind?
I think we maybe alluded to
We
it
might have
last
mentioned
time,
it.
but yeah.
Yeah, we've got a Brew York State of Mind series, which is basically our barrel aged beers. They were intended to be at least 12-month barrel aged, but it's taken so long to get this ready that it's more like 18-month barrel aged.
Well, the first one's going to say 12 months barrel aged, but it's probably going to be more like 14 by the time you get it. And then the next one, I think, is about 16-month barrel aged.
So some pretty cool beers that we're going to release, and they'll usually, if there's one available, will be part of the beer subscription as well. So yeah, we're not going to do the thing where you just fill it full of your core range. It's always going to be interesting special beers, and there will be some core range beers in there, but it'll be at the right balance, we think.
Yeah, you'll have noticed the way in which we do things. We like to knock out new, fresh, interesting stuff all the time. We're going to try and make sure the bulk of that ends up in these kind of subscription packs. Okay, we had a question off camera there where we were asked if we were able to ship this to Europe. I imagine that's something we're going to have to look at offline.
We'll look into the options, but I don't think we can. It's to do with beer duty. So basically we pay duty tax on beer for sale in the UK. If it goes into another country, you have to pay tax as well. So it's quite difficult to ship to international countries because of tax. So yeah, I don't think it's going to be an option, but we'll look into it, and we want our beer to be as easy accessible as possible.
So how soon are people going to be able to get this?
So it'll be ready for a month's time when we do our next live tasting. So the beers, I think, the end of September the boxes arrive here. So we'll put it live probably middle of September, so people can subscribe, and then we'll fulfil the first orders by the end of September.
So probably the best thing to do is check our social media. We'll post on there about it. Hey, I picked the hand again. Oh, I almost took the camera out there. Right. So you do that one.
I think it says trash can 489. What do the audience think of your sour?
Ah, well, let's ask them.
Won over for the first time ever, actually.
Brilliant.
Nice. So that was a resounding yes for anyone that didn't hear that. So 50 not out. Congratulations once again on your upcoming 50th. Was Ripple Twister created in COVID? It wasn't. It was actually a re-release. It's one of the beers that people voted on to be re-released for this time. I think it might be 2 years since we brewed it. I think we skipped it last year, didn't we?
I think we pretty much launched it at Leeds 2 years ago, Leeds International Beer Festival. So it was absolutely good. We would have been there right now. Leeds International Beer Festival is normally this weekend each year, and it's by far and away my favourite beer festival in the UK. It's just such a cool vibe. Yeah. We usually feature in the teepee, so if you go there, there's a teepee outside, and that's usually where we're based. It's just such a great festival. We get a load of local support, so for us it's always a bit intense because we're so busy pouring, but if we can get someone working the bar, me and Lee can prop it up and have a drink and enjoy the festival. And yeah, it's such a shame obviously because of coronavirus it can't be on this year, but we can't wait to be back there next year. It's going to be pretty awesome.
I'm not sure where to go with this one. That is the question. Right.
I'll follow up.
So let's bite a bit off at a time. So my name is Darren Longhorn. As you may know, I recently purchased 12-year beers for tasting back. For this evening's live tasting on YouTube, I have a few questions, mainly with regards to your tap room. If that's all right, I live in York, but as of yet, I've never visited the tap room. I recently tried to, oh my God. I recently tried my first beer, which was part of the Cyberfest 3-pack. So that's a beer that we sent into Beer 52, so that would have been Karma Chameleon. It was very nice. About the tap room, is it all right to just call in?
Yeah, so in the tap room, unfortunately, we're in the tap room right now filming this, but the tap room's not actually open yet. So we will hopefully open it in the coming months, hopefully in time for Christmas it'll be back open. But given that our brewery is literally there, we wanted to be as cautious as possible with coronavirus, and we didn't want to open this place up and all of a sudden we get a reported someone's caught corona and then we have to close down production. We thought we'd play it safe. So upstairs, our beer hall with the food is open right now. It's open 6 days a week, and we highly recommend you book your seat in advance because, especially on weekends and during August when we'll be doing the Eat Out to help out, Tuesdays and Wednesdays we're as busy as weekends, so it's quite hard to guarantee a spot unless you pre-book. You don't have to, and you can turn up and hope that there's a table, but yeah, like I say, it's definitely worth pre-booking if you can. And then on weekends we open the brewer's yard at the front, so there's usually a few walk-up tables there. You can book into. So
I've read ahead. There are a lot of questions in here. A lot of them are about how things run here at the venue. So we will we'll take those questions and we'll contact you offline about that. One that I think we maybe could answer is which are your favourite craft beers from other breweries?
Interesting one. I chop and change quite a lot. The type of beers I'm drinking depends on whose tap room I've been to recently or what festivals I've been to. So
are you a bit like Bruce? Everyone's your favourite.
Yeah. So go on, you can start.
Well, no, I mean, it's a bit cliche. I mean, what we always talk about generally when we're asked this is the beers that got us into doing what we're doing. And for me, it's always going to be Jaipur. That was my first exposure to an American IPA. It was my first exposure to American hops. It was my first exposure to anything that was really that bitter. So yeah, Jaipur for me. Still to this day, absolutely love Thornbridge as a brewery. I think what they do is understated. They are underrated. They don't shout about what they do. They just knock out solid product. And for me, that's what a brewery should be about. It shouldn't be about being a marketing machine. The product should speak for itself, and with someone like Thornbridge, it does.
Obviously, had a lot of Fierce products last night, so there's some pretty awesome ones there. But one of my favourites that those guys do. Well, which one to start with? The Very Berry's awesome. So that's basically a berry sour. That one is a sour, so if you don't like sours, it's probably not for you. But then going back to what Lee said, the breweries that influenced us to start with. So Magic Rock have always been one of my favourite breweries. They were having such a big impact on the scene, weren't they? When we came around and when we started drinking beer. So we got the chance to brew a beer with them quite early on as well, and that was pretty awesome. That was really good.
That was a pinch yourself moment, wasn't it?
Yeah. When they first brought out Unhuman Cannonball, which is their Triple IPA, that was just nuts. That was just, no one was doing anything like that at that point in time. Really, really good beer.
Okay, so some more questions just coming through from online. So, Trash Can 489, same one you just had over. Do a Bramble Stout. So we're not adverse to combining fruit with dark beers. So never say never.
Yeah, Bramble Stouts. The guys at Fairytale did one for Colabs Fest a few years back. I remember it was interesting. It was obviously the stout flavours, but then you're getting the fruitiness kick in. We do Muffin House Matters. That's a dark beer with a fruity back.
Yeah, we've used blueberry with a stout a couple of times. I think it's that combination of kind of dark berry with that roasty character works really well. So yeah. We'll definitely do something along those lines again.
So we've got an interesting one here from Dave McLean. What would you guys do if another brewery used one of your beer names for one of their beers and you felt it wasn't accidental? So we've done it. We've accidentally used other people's names. So we have Shea Guava Carver we brought out during lockdown. There's a brewery called Williams Brothers in Scotland who do one of their core beers is called Shea Guava. We didn't realise that, so we obviously apologised and promised not to brew that beer under that name again, which is kind of a standard that we'd expect. We did it once with Siren, so that was accidental again. We brewed this was a really interesting one actually. We brewed a beer, a collab beer with Vocation Brewery from Hebden Bridge, and we called it Sellout Juice because it was our fingers up at everyone who said that, because at the time we sold to Tesco's, they sold to Tesco's, that we were they were getting a lot more grief than we were about being sellouts. So we thought it's funny, we'll call it Sellout Juice, an 11% Triple IPA type of thing you'd never get in Tesco's.
And we put loads of snakes on it and things.
And then we got a chance to rebrew that beer with them a second time, and they came here, we brewed it, and we were going to call it Sellout Juice, DEUCE, as in it's the second time we brewed it, and we thought it was quite clever at the time. But for one reason or other, they were really nervous about calling it that because they were about to do something with another brewery. I won't mention who they are, but they were scared that other brewery would be offended, that they think that we were having a dig at them, which we obviously weren't. It was the same beer, it was a pun on that name. So we said, okay, what can we call it last minute? We still need to use the snake. We have the can design. We still need to use the snakes. Oh, we'll call it Medusa. So we basically paid a few £100 to replace the sleeves. So we'd already bought and paid for the can artwork. So we paid a few £100, got them replaced. Beer came in, and I go for a pint in the York tap. And what do I see? I see a beer called Medusa by Siren sat on the tap. I was like, oh my God, we've literally just wrote off all the other ones.
So that wasn't, I mean, it was a little bit of bad planning on our part, but they just brought that to market at the same time as us. But they were really nice about it. They got in touch and said, look, we've just released this beer. Would you mind not using that name because we're using it? Like, it's fine, it's a one-off beer. We promise once this stock's gone, we won't do it again. And yeah, mostly that's the way our industry works. People ask nicely. It's when you don't respond that then people can get nasty.
So likewise, if someone did use a name that we had, we'd approach it in the same way. So Lee mentioned earlier, Equinot Be Serious. We did a beer called that. We spotted that someone brought us. I spotted that someone also brought a beer out with the same name about a year after we brought it out. So I just pinged them an email and just said, sorry guys, we already have a beer under that name. Can you either rename it or not brew it again under that name? And they were absolutely fine about it. We haven't had any awkward ones yet, thankfully.
Not yet, but knowing us, we will.
Yeah.
So next one, Andrew Morgan, really nice substitute for cancelled Leeds International Beer Festival tonight. Thanks. You're very welcome. Do you have plans for a Brew York bar outside of the city of York? Right.
Yeah, we do. We have one. It's called Market Tap in Pocklington.
I'm going to nip for a little that one.
So yeah, that was our first venture outside of York at the start of the year, and then coronavirus kicked in, and bars aren't the necessarily a sensible investment. but yeah, we still would like to open more bars. We're just going to hope the right opportunities come up and look for some in the next coming months. Yeah. Well, to be fair, besides Docks, there's nowhere else really to go drinking, is there? So from Z Daggers Underfan, I've been out to get chips for my son, so sorry if it's been asked. But what is your thought about the change in tax for small breweries? So we talked a bit about this on the last one a month ago. But yeah, basically the small brewers duty relief. Basically, any brewer who produces less than 5,000 hectolitres of beer, which is about not far off 1 million pints of beer a year, we get duty relief from the government. So basically, the tax we pay on beer is reduced because of this scheme, and the government have proposed a scheme. There's been a lobbying group that have approached the government, and they've convinced them to change this scheme to lower the limit from 5,000 hectolitres down to 2,100 hectolitres a year. So we brew 5,000 hectolitres at the moment, so that means we will start paying more tax.
So it got a bit political while I was away.
Yeah. So yeah, it's not good, and the problem is the group of brewers who are lobbying the government have had this benefit. A lot of them, they've basically experienced it, got their duty relief, now grown to a bigger scale, and now are asking for the drawbridge to be raised after them, and say, well, no one else should get that.
Did you do the supermarket analogy?
No, go on.
Yeah. So to put this in very simple terms, it's basically like we are the corner shop. There are this select group of bigger brewers. Think of them as the co-op. And then you have the really, really big international brewers. Think of those as Tesco's. So basically the co-op has decided to get together with other supermarkets of their size and ask the corner shops to pay more tax so they can compete with Tesco's. It's an absolutely preposterous idea. It's a select group of 40 breweries. 20 or so have already dissociated themselves from this movement. So there's about 20 unknown breweries, about only 3 of which will make themselves known publicly. And they have lobbied the government, and somehow 20 of an entire nation of 2,500 breweries has managed to change government policy. So, well, Hogsback Brewery is the leading force in it.
You've got Timmy Taylor's a part of it. Who are the other ones it's so difficult to find out.
Fuller's were part of it, but then they've been bought out by, is it Asahi anyway? So, yeah.
They're all big breweries,
Yeah.
pretending they're just masquerading as small breweries.
Yeah.
Try and do.
Yeah, if you call themselves small breweries, it's ridiculous. These are regional, okay, family-owned, but well-established breweries that have a scale that we can only dream of, and they're calling themselves small, and they want the likes of us to pay more tax, so they can compete with the bigger, even bigger breweries.
And a few of them are already admitting that the change in tax won't affect them anyway whatsoever.
So why endorse it? Like Wayne said earlier, why should you get to build the castle and then pull up the drawbridge?
So we've got to move on to the next beer because we.
So have we done that one or not?
We've got some more questions that we can save for later. So.
Can I come to my last very question on my list?
Yeah.
Which comes in quite handy with this one.
Cheers for opening both cans, Tony.
Which is, what's the highest ABV you would go?
At the moment that we've brewed, is it 15%?
No, how high would you go?
Oh, how would you?
Well, so if you're trying to make a standard beer, the limitation really is your yeast. Yeast is what produces the alcohol, but the alcohol itself is a toxin. So the yeast essentially starts poisoning itself. Some yeasts are more tolerant to that than the others. So if you select the right yeast, you could maybe push a beer towards the sort of 20% mark. If you want to go higher than 20%, as Brewdog did with things like Sink the Bismarck, what you have to do is what they call freeze distillation, which is basically you brew a strong beer and then you freeze it and the ice crystals allow you to remove the water from the beer. And then you do that repeatedly to just carry on removing the water, so you end up with a concentrated form of the beer. So they can still call that beer. It's not being distilled in the way that a spirit has been, but for me, that's not the way I want to drink beer. I want to drink beer in a long, tall glass like this. If I want to have something short like that, I'll buy a whiskey.
So 15%.
17ish maybe. It's to be fair, even above 15%, it's not that appealing. I've been to beer festivals and just looked at it, but no, I don't even want to try that. That's just crazy.
BS.
Yeah.
They're the kind of things you generally seek out.
Question to my wife's very good question.
Sorry.
Would you, and I've asked this before online, would you do a low or no alcohol beer?
We're looking at the options at the moment because there's such a huge market for it. It's not something we've done, and with our kit and everything else, it just, I don't think we'd get the product right, so that's why we've not looked at it too much. But we do get a lot of feedback from customers that are coming in saying that they'd like to see more low and no alcohol options in our beer.
We will do it.
I would.
Yeah, we've seen some research that's out there that says by 2025, 20% of the international beer market will be low and no. So you can't ignore that. In the same way that we've developed a gluten-free beer, of course we're going to have to look at doing a low alcohol beer at some point. It's something I've started to look into how you do. As with anything that we do, we don't just want to do it, we want to do it right. It needs to be done in the right way. To do it in the right way is not necessarily cheap. So you're going to have to kind of leave that one with us. But yeah, it's something we will definitely do at some point.
Bad ones out there, but there are actually coming out. So
I really like Tiny Rebels, Club Tropica. No. It's Club Tropica NA, so a non-alcoholic version of Club Tropicana. Really, really nice beer, really enjoyable, and it's 0.5%. But yeah, the pun on it's great. They got a cease and desist. They can't call the beer Club Tropicana anymore. So they basically cleverly they called it Club Tropica, and then the non-alcoholic version was Club Tropica space NA. And non-alcoholic is
I like what they did there. Yeah. So it's not just us. It's an industry-wide issue, certainly in craft. So I think we need to move on to talking about the beer that we are already drinking.
Yeah, exactly.
Cheers.
12%.
the antithesis of a low alcohol.
Yeah.
So this is Espresso Patronum. We refer to it as a 12% Imperial breakfast stout, easy for me to say. Always makes me laugh that we call it a breakfast stout, because I would very much like to see how your day turned out if you consumed this for breakfast. So the reason we call it breakfast is, of course, because of the use of coffee. And really what we've gone for with this beer is really the mocha. So we've got coffee, we've got chocolate, we've got sweetness. The sweetness, once again, is coming from the lactose, which is also giving a big part of the body in there as well. This has been brewed with Amundsen, our very good friends over at Amundsen. So Amundsen we met a number of years ago. I think this might be even another Leeds International story. So you think we spent our lives there?
London Craft Beer Festival.
Oh, is it?
The main bit, yeah. But yeah, they're known for their pastry stouts. They're really nice.
Give them their proper name.
Dick. Dessert in a can. So yeah, really, really cool beers. Really awesome flavours, as well as a great base stout. But they then got some really cool, interesting flavours. Usually coconut, pecan. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're doing certain things like Rocky Roads, like cookie flavour type things. Yeah, their beers are insane.
Yeah, I've got a super sweet tooth when it comes to stuff like that. So absolutely love their beers, and met the guys a couple of years back, and Jeff, the owner, is a real nice South African guy, and he passed me a pint of dessert in a can, and I was just like, what? Okay.
Yeah, Jeff's a very fun guy to drink with. He's an absolute sadist. He just likes to mess people up. So he just gives you pint after pint of his ridiculously strong stuff, where none of it's under 10%.
No.
And he'll give you it by the pint.
So yeah, when we asked them if they'd like to brew a beer with us at some point, and awesomely we haven't been and done the return leg of this yet, which can't wait to get across there.
Well, that little thing called COVID happened, didn't it?
Yeah. So these guys are based in Norway, so it's pretty cool to get across there and do the return leg. But yeah, so we got a chance to brew a beer with them, so we had to go for a strong sweet dark beer, and yeah, the Harry Potter fans loved it as well, so it kind of got a bit popular.
I was trying to think when we were prepping for this as to who came up with the name for that. Was it another Sam one?
Probably,
It was?
Yeah.
Sam's done quite a few of our names, hasn't he? Right, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so it is pretty strong. It's 12%. It's the sweetness does hide a bit of the alcohol, but yeah, it's an end of the night drink. Lee hates coffee, so it's a bit of a weird one for him.
Well, I hate coffee. I would never drink coffee. My drink of choice is going to be tea. And I drink it Builder's way, as strong as you can possibly make it with a minimal amount of milk. Coffee, yeah, you'd never get me drinking, but for whatever reason, coffee I don't mind so much in a beer. I am going to be totally honest with you guys here, and I think the last version of this that we made was better. It didn't finish as sweet. We used a different type of coffee. This is used a cafe aroma, like an Italian type of coffee, whereas previously we used a Colombian Arabica, and that had a much more intense, more espresso type flavour. See, I may not like coffee, but through making beer I've learned a little bit about it, and apparently Arabica is what you would make an espresso with, and Cafe Roma is more the sort of thing you would make the mocha with. So we went for the mocha style bean this time, but I think we have lost some of the coffee intensity in doing so. I think this absolutely has the chocolate. I think, even though, as I say again, I don't like coffee, I think the coffee in that needed to be bigger. But all of that said, doesn't taste like 12%, not remotely. This could get you in a lot of trouble.
Definitely.
You're adding, sorry, when you're adding vanilla or coffee, you're adding vanilla extract, or are you crushing up coffee beans, those two different flavours?
So the with coffee, we have a coconut infusion vessel, something we built especially for Ton Coco, which is basically a really big stainless steel vessel with two massive filters, one at the bottom, one at the top, and we put coconut or coffee or chocolate or cacao into that. We then purge all the oxygen out of it, and then we force the beer through it. So basically you just pump the beer through and circulate it through. So we use whole coffee beans and we do it that way, and you get the coffee flavour coming through.
Yeah. I mean, we mess around with stupid ingredients and stupid flavours that much. We actually have 3 different types of infusion vessel now. Different sizes, designed to achieve different things. So yeah, slightly unusual, I guess. So coffee and vanilla, we make our own. So we buy in Madagascar bourbon vanilla, and then we slice it up, we scrape out the beans, we infuse that into something that's not spirit based, because you're not allowed to do that, and then we use that, and then we put that into the beer. So if you were to buy an extract, it's described as 1-fold or 2-fold. So 1-fold means 10% is the vanilla, 2-fold means 20% is the vanilla. The way in which we produce our own is nearer to 50%. So it's really kind of intense vanilla extract.
And you can tell, you can really taste the vanilla the way we do it. I've tried beers with vanilla essence before, and they're not great. Unfortunately, it just doesn't give you the same sort of flavour, and it tastes fake. So it's just nicer to use real vanilla beans for it, vanilla pods. So given that we've talked quite a lot and we've probably running out of time, I think we should move on to some of our. We've got 15 minutes. It depends how much charge we've got on the phone as well.
And we need to leave some time to talk about our very big news.
Yeah, exactly. So going on to, we'll tell you a little bit about what upcoming beers we've got, and then we'll tell you a little bit more about the news. So I can't quite read it over there. So we've already mentioned Mos Eisley. So Mos Eisley Katarina's back this time as a coconut something, is it?
Lime and guava. ABV up to 6.5% this time from 4.5.
So yeah, excited for that to be back. We've also got a beer called Life is Peachy coming out. So Life is Peachy is a peach sour IPA.
Also an album by these guys.
Yes, this is the dad's favourite. Maris the Otter's coming back, our English bitter. So we always get asked for English bitter in our tap room and our bar in Pocklington. So Maris is a seasonal beer. We bring it out usually in autumn. So what are you doing? I only poured a small amount of that in my glass for a reason.
Well, tonight you can call me Jeff.
Yeah. So Maris is back, and we're actually going to can it because apparently it's the cool craft thing to do now, bitter. So we'll see.
Just like to say on that point, we're not jumping on the bandwagon. We first released that beer back in 2016. We are just bringing it back
out every year. So be interested to see how that sells in cans. Another beer returning is Nuba. So Nuba was our first New England IPA we brewed. It's got its own design now. So we brought back Triple H earlier on this year. Nuba's now got a revamped design. So that'll be back soon. And then Toncoco, I mentioned that as well earlier. So Toncoco, the vegan-friendly Toncoco's back.
So, and then we're starting to get into Christmas/silly season. So each year you'll know we release a beer called Fairytale or Brew York. It's always 4.9%. We change the flavours each year. This year we are once again releasing Fairytale or Brew York. It is going to be peanut, pecan, maple, vanilla, and a hint of cinnamon. But that's not enough.
Yeah.
So this year we're going to make a trilogy of beers. We're going to call it Fairy Tales, Nightmares and Dreams. Nightmare is going to be a 9.8% Imperial coffee and walnut cake milk stout, some of which we are going to barrel age in masala barrels for release this for Christmas next year. And then Dreams is going to be a cranberry pastry sour.
Pastry sour, so you might like it.
Yeah. So that trilogy will be released. I think we're looking towards the end of October. We're going to make it available as a gift pack, possibly including a glass.
So it's one of those weird things. It's obviously Christmas beer, but it's so early. But what we learned is that we get pretty hectic. We focus on different things. And our first couple of years, we were really late in bringing out our Christmas beer. And what you don't want is to be left with that beer in January. So last year we worked with a distributor called Beer Paradise, and they said to us that we want to come down and brew the beer with you, and we'll take a load of it off you. But the only condition is you need to brew it in October. We're like, what? Really? So we had to have the beer ready in October, and it was worth it because we had the beer. It sold in huge volumes.
It turns out they were right, we were wrong. That beer absolutely flew out. So we had to rebrew it again to meet demand later in the year.
Exactly. So being super organised this year, we figured bringing 3 beers out, we need to make sure that we're ready with it. So yeah, we're brewing our Christmas beer soon.
And then the final 2 upcoming beers we have to tell you about is we're about to brew our 6th Hunderskeil. So that's when we want to see a particular beer return, one that we are now calling HYG. The new artwork is underway. This time it's going to have a sloth wearing something that might look like a superhero t-shirt on.
Well, we'll find a way. So.
I mean, I can't possibly say where the inspiration for that has come from. So, and then the final one is we also have another beer coming up soon that we're going to call Project Handley. And why are we going to call it that way?
So Project Handley is going to be a bit of a nod, a dedication to what our cool, exciting news is. Exciting news is we've signed the lease on a new premises to start a bigger brewery. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's going to be. We're going to keep everything we've got here, so we're going to still brew on this site. We're going to more special and interesting things. So your barrel aged beers, your true sours at some point, your really cool experimental stuff will still be brewed on this site. But our main production is moving to a new facility, and it's going to be pretty epic. It's got some fancy kit going into it. We're going to we've just got all the funding and everything agreed. So we're basically going to generate 16 new jobs as part of the growth. We're going to put in kit that's basically triple the size of what we have here, but capable of brewing multiple times per day. So our capacity is going to go up hugely overnight. So it's pretty exciting, and we're going to be aiming to be brewing in there by December. So it's really quick in terms of the turnaround and what we're going to be doing.
And amazingly, it's only 15 minutes from here. It's
Yeah.
going to be in Oswaldwick. It's practically on Wayne's doorstep.
Yeah. So
After a heavy session, you can probably crawl home.
don't have far to go. So yeah, it's really exciting. We've been pre-COVID. We were looking at the options and looking at how we can grow and what we can do. And then obviously all hell broke loose, and we had to try and adapt our business model. And thankfully, having a great team around us and being flexible and being able to make decisions quickly and change the direction of the business, we focused on cans. We sold a lot of canned beer, and we fortunately had a state-of-the-art canning line installed in March. As part of our growth, we were hoping to get the canning line here, then take it to wherever we went, and it couldn't have been the decision couldn't have come at a better time, because that enabled us to put all our production pretty much into can throughout lockdown, which has helped us keep our growth going during this.
COVID, no COVID, we've been struggling to keep up with demand. We've pushed that kit, we've pushed this building as far as we possibly can. Even if we could get more beer out of that, we've nowhere to put it. So we have now taken on this new site. We're investing an eye-watering $1.5 million in this next stage of our growth, which when you get to those kind of numbers, it's just like, yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And we are going to have some super sexy kit going in there. So we are going to have 4 100 hectolitre vessels, 950 hectolitre fermenting vessels.
So into context, so that those tanks behind you now, there are 20 hec vessels. The tall ones we have are the 50 hec vessels. So we're going to have 9 of them at the new site, the big ones, and then we're going to have the 100 hec ones, which are twice the size of that. We're going to have 4 of them. So all of a sudden, what we can brew in a year, we can brew 4 times that volume at the new site, and there's still space to do that all again if we wanted to, if we're lucky enough to keep growing. So.
To put that into relatable numbers, what we're currently producing here would be approaching 1 million pints in a year. What we're installing 15 minutes up the road will allow us to do 4 million pints. And we are taking on a premises which has sufficient space to easily double that and even go further than that should we need to.
So yeah, it's been a bit frustrating because we've obviously been working hard behind the scenes trying to get all these things in a row, and we couldn't talk about, we can't say anything about it because it was all dependent on a few things happening on the financing. But yeah, it's great that we literally can finally start talking about it and stop keeping it a secret. There's some pretty good, like you said, the kit that's going in is going to be really cool, but there's also other things, like we're going to put a 4 degrees cold store in, so all our beer, it's going to be a huge warehouse where all the beer is stored at 4 degrees all the time, so it keeps your beer fresher for longer. It means that basically it'll come straight off the canning line. By the time you package it, it's about 4 degrees. It'll go straight into a cold store, stay at that temperature, and then we'll be looking to get cold chain delivery direct to pubs and customers, so it stays fresher and it's the best the product can be.
Tap room?
Yeah, potentially. We'd like to, because we know how well the tap room works.
No immediate plans for tap room. We definitely want to hold events up there. So the size of the building is about 13,000 square feet. So that's about almost 3 times the size of the building we're currently in here. We then have an exterior area, a yard, that's almost that size again.
The yard's huge.
So the yard is going to be brilliant for when we get into the summer months and we can host some big events, hopefully have some nice outdoor music and great food vendors that will pair beautifully with our beers. So I think initially we'll probably more go down that route because we already have this in the city centre and that's only 15 minutes away. But never say never. If that proves to be really popular, then maybe we would consider doing something like that up there.
Saltaire do a really good monthly one.
Yeah.
With
I
it,
think
I
they
don't
do
know
it.
if you know what I mean. And it's like the last Friday of every month. And it's just, you just turn up and you drink at the brewery, surrounded by the brewery equipment, a bit like this.
When we went down to do the collab at Beavertown have got they won an award for the best brewery tap room in London. And I was like, that's crazy. Like it's a production brewery with a tiny little room and a teepee outside, not teepee.
The floor space we're currently sat in right now is bigger than their tap room.
And it doesn't mean the tap room, it means just this seating area. Their tap room was tiny, and it just shows the potential that people like to drink on an industrial estate, apparently. Well, we are now, but
I mean,
this is a city
who
centre,
knows? I
which
mean,
is-
London has a very interconnected public transport system.
I know one.
Is that expansion then, are you still sat within the bracket small breweries?
No, so when you go, if the change to the duty scheme wasn't going to happen, if you go above 5,000 hectolitre, you need to really go above it. You need to get to 10,000 plus to really make it worthwhile, because every single pint you sell above 5,000 hectolitres, you're paying full duty on it, and that's a lot of money. And so the economies of scale, you need to really grow to be able to save enough money elsewhere to fund that duty. So that was our plan. We were going to go big and try and get to above 10,000 hectolitres as quick as possible. And then the government announced this duty change. So if the duty change goes ahead, it would benefit us, because basically we'd become one of those breweries that pay slightly less tax, but because we go to that category. But we're still against it, because we don't want to go, like Lee said earlier, go across the drawbridge and pull up the pasture ourselves. We've had the benefit of duty.
To be absolutely clear, as this cartel of 20 breweries has highlighted, small can mean one of two things. Small can either mean stepping over that, producing more than 500,000 litres a year, but the true definition of micro versus macro is 60,000 hectolitres. And what that means is we could sell 12 times the amount of beer that we're selling today, and we would still be considered a microbrewery.
Mm.
It's just that they are towards the upper end of that bracket.
So in doing the move, it's going to mean a lot of exciting things that we can do here in this space. Because at the moment we fill this place with rubbish everywhere. That's not rubbish, but we're hoarders. We have stuff everywhere. So as soon as we get into the new site, we can store things more efficiently. We've got a bit more space here. We could expand the tap room if we wanted to. We could. We've got a room through there which we use as a cocktail lounge for events. There's a space next to it which we currently use as beer storage, so that would go across the new site. So there's potential there. Our top floor of this building, it wouldn't be for the public, but there's a whole floor the same size as the beer hall that we don't use at the moment. The stuff we store there could go to the new site, and we could use that for something. And there's all sorts we can do, which would be pretty cool. And that's not mentioned in the new brewery or what we do with the current brewery here.
I mean, Wayne briefly touched on what we might do with this site here. One thing you're probably not aware of is that my biggest passion when it comes to beer is spontaneous or mixed fermentation beers. Through there somewhere I have a collection of lambic beers. They are my favourite beers. That's what I like to collect. And that's where I want to take this site. Mm-hmm. I want us to do interesting barrel-aged beers. I want us to do mixed ferm, spontaneous, maybe even have, say, a mobile cool ship where you just take something out into the North York Moors. You see the bacteria land onto your cooling beer, you bring that bacteria back in and just see what it does. So that's where I would like this to go. But that's going to take a while. Once you start dealing with that kind of bacteria, you get lots of losses, and for some of it you're talking 3-year turnarounds. But I think that opens up an interesting avenue for us.
So it's worth getting on those subscription boxes early.
Yeah.
Right, can you put the mic over there, and can you just say that again, please?
Yeah, it's worth getting on those subscription boxes early now.
Right, you heard it first. So I think we're pretty much done. I think maybe we wrap up with a few more questions.
Yeah,
and then
so once we're going to stop streaming at 9. We're going to stop streaming at any second now. And then you guys can still ask us questions. The battery's going to go, so we're going to have to...
I thought you said 20% battery.
No.
2% battery.
No.
I misread that. Okay.
So
we're going.
Next, have we already gone? Okay.
Right.
Next live tasting.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. Make sure you send us your feedback. We'd like to know what you've enjoyed, what you've not enjoyed. What would you like to see next time?
And if you want to be part of the audience next time, be sure to follow.
Oh, and final bit. Our new project is we're going to be doing regular YouTube videos, and we've installed a stop motion camera that will capture the entire installation.
Yeah.